decided to wait for some time before we had kids. And I had always wanted twins anyway, and the prospect of twins was almost impossible. There are hardly any twins in his lineage, there's hardly any twins in my lineage. We had decided that, we wanted twins, and I had started taking medications that would induce multiple conception. But then I was advised against it because someone said that they had had cases where women had taken those pills and they had conjoined twins. And I got scared, so I stopped. So the next option was IVF, and we started our process for IVF. We had 2 embryos inserted back in. I was over the moon excited when, of course, the news came that it was positive and I was pregnant. I remember the doctor's voice vividly saying to me, "We have a singleton." There are many people who have gone through this process and the result was negative countless times. And here we were, we'd done it just once and we had a conception. So I had to rethink my thoughts, and I was grateful to God. During the course of my pregnancy, I got to
realize that
IVF pregnancies were taking somewhat more, not seriously, but somewhat more special, than regular conception.
Well, let's say all pregnancies are special, but when it comes to a woman who became pregnant through assisted conception, particularly in vitro fertilization, probably with intracytoplasmic sperm injection, so as IVF, it becomes special because most of those women, they've had challenges with getting pregnant. For a while, they've invested so much finances, time and emotion into this current pregnancy. So it's kind of a pregnancy that you don't want to take any chance. You just want everything to go well because you don't know the next time this woman will get pregnant, or you're not sure of what will go into our next pregnancy in terms of finance, emotions, care, so you just want to get it right this time. But I'll still insist that all pregnancies are special.
During the course of the pregnancy, I had a cause for a scare several times, but on one particular night, I remember I had bled profusely, and I honestly thought that I had lost the baby because it was messy. Before I had my baby, I was referred to Dr. Greg Ohihoin. He insisted that I had my antenatal at the Island Maternity Clinic.
Island Maternity, for maternity care, is described as the ground zero for the care for a mother and child, particularly pregnant women and neonates in West Africa, because of the pedigree that it has and been in existence for, at that time, over 50 years. And I was working there as a consultant obstetrician gynecologist, with the strength of resource persons that we had on ground. It was like the safest place for a woman carrying her first pregnancy. And considering the background of pregnancy and all the stories, I just felt that the safest place for her to have her maternity care would be in Island Maternity.
Some of the things that I really appreciated about having Dr. Ohihoin in my corner was that, he had this way of making me feel comfortable every time I was at the clinic. So it didn't feel like being in front of a doctor. I don't know if you understand. It was friendly, it was calm, warm and nice. During one of my visits to the clinic, he realized my feet were swollen and I had edema. And I thought it was normal because people had said that, during pregnancy, your body would increase in certain places, sometimes your breast, sometimes your feet. I didn't realize that an edema had something to do with my internal organs.
Over 80% of women who have edema in pregnancy is expected in most pregnancies, so it's common. It's not what you look as a sign of kidney function in pregnancy, because you're looking at every woman that they have kidney function. But outside pregnancy, edema becomes a significant sign of renal impairment, of kidney dysfunction. But in pregnancy, you cannot point to edema because 80% of normal pregnant women will have edema. So it's not something you look up to as a big sign for kidney dysfunction.
I was particularly happy that as much as he brought it to the fore and made me aware of it, he didn't scare me. So I honestly didn't understand how serious it was. But he kept saying that after I put to bed, we would have to run some tests and see what was wrong with me. And then came the time we had a regular routine checkup, and my blood pressure was alarmingly high. And I thought it was normal. 2 or 3 years prior was the first time I'd had the first stint of the fact that I had a high blood pressure, and nobody explained what it was or what the implications of it were. I had gone to an ENT doctor to have my throat checked and routine checks. The nurse had come and said that my blood pressure was high. As a matter of fact, she hadn't told me my blood pressure was high. She took the blood pressure and then she said, "Oh, hold on," and then she scurried off. And then another nurse came to me and said, "Oh, how are you feeling?" I said, "I'm feeling great." She scurried off again, and then they were gone for some time, and I called and I said, "What's going on?" And they said, "Oh, please hold on, doctor will see you really soon." You know, it kind of felt weird. And then I got in there and the doctor asked me, "How did you get here?" I said, "I came in a car." He said, "Did you drive?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I'm sorry, we wouldn't let you go back. We would have to keep you here." And you know, I went all defensive and I was like, why would you keep me? I feel fine, I feel great. You know, all of that time I didn't understand the implications of this, and it is in the place of maybe a partnership between the medical field and the media to school us on a lot of things. Had I known at the time, you know, what the high blood pressure was or its implications, I probably would have taken better care of myself than I did. Anyway, when Dr. Greg came and said that my blood pressure was high, it didn't feel like anything because, you know, I'd heard it before and they had just let me go home and the world was okay, you know. But then Dr. Greg said to me that it was abnormal, and I said, "Why?" And he had said that high blood pressure in young people was caused either by a strain of an internal organ or caused by an external strain.
Now with blood pressure elevation, there's a strain in the heart, increased, you know, pressure on the heart, because the heart has to pump against an increased pressure. Now, so it's actually the heart that the strain is put on by virtue of the condition going on in the kidneys. But it's a vicious cycle, and by this I mean that because the kidney causes the blood pressure to rise, and therefore pressure is put on the heart, over a while this begins to also tell on the kidneys itself, so that cardiac function is affected in the long run. Like I said earlier, chronic kidney disease is a systemic condition, meaning many other systems become inclusive in this entire condition. Remember again that it makes values of cholesterol go up, and the result of cholesterol being elevated is that blood vessels are narrowed, the amount of blood that passes through them is small, the amount of blood needed by the body is not met, and hence, you know, more pressure on the vessels and the heart.
It was almost still bogus to me because I didn't understand it quite exactly. But he just said to me, "You know what, just calm down. We'll put you on certain medications to keep it low, but you know, as soon as you put to bed, we have to run tests." I was pretty excited when my son came. I was a first-time mom, and here I was holding a life, a little life, and that life kind of belonged to me. But rather, I was entrusted to, you know, care and love for this life. It was amazing. And then some days after my son's birth, we had to go back to the clinic for my postnatal check. And I couldn't understand why I felt the way I felt, but I was almost at the brink of depression. I was crying uncontrollably in the doctor's office, and every time he asked why I was crying, I just said I didn't know, because I honestly didn't know.
Many women will come down with puerperal blues, postpartum blues, or at times some can become severe and go into full-blown depression. If the caregiver is not prepared for it, it could take the caregiver or the doctor by surprise. But if something that you're used to, you understand that almost 20 to 25% of women will come down with puerperal blues, but to different degrees. And a sensitive doctor will be able to pick this, for Ufuoma's case, it was surprising because she was like the super mom, just after her delivery, even during her pregnancy, quite strong, well comported, never really had issues, took everything positively in her stride. And suddenly she comes to the clinic, all of a sudden, talking, she breaks down, starts crying. So it was a bit surprising, but not unusual. But support must come more importantly from the spouse, understanding, immediate family members. They have to give her space, nobody should condemn her. There's not the time that people will come around and start telling you that, are you not thankful for what God has done, sir? Don't be ungrateful to God, stuff like that. People must understand that, that this is normal. No time to condemn her or judge her or say the other person did not behave like this. Why is it that your case is always different?
They had to deal with me going through those postpartum blues. That whole period was very, very difficult and trying on. And those were the times I appreciated having my mom, having my siblings, having my nanny and my husband around me. Because there were times I'd just leave my son, I didn't even want to be with him. They ran the normal checks again and my blood pressure had gone up. I had had some difficulty sleeping and all, so they put me on medications to help me sleep. And for reasons I can't explain, I didn't take those meds. I'll take them the one day and I'll sleep, and I just forget to take them. But after some time, I was still breastfeeding, and so they really couldn't put me on the medications they wanted to. So I'd gone past childbirth, and then there was breastfeeding, because whatever it is I take, my baby would feed on as well during breastfeeding. So as long as I was still feeding him, they couldn't treat me, so I was still on hold for some time.
During breastfeeding, some of the medications that mothers take eventually get to the babies. You want to wait for the mother to complete breastfeeding before you introduce those drugs. It's safer to use them outside of breastfeeding.
After 3 months, exactly after 3 months, I stopped breastfeeding and we put him on formula because I had to take care of myself. Then we started running tests. The strain of doing those tests was physically very telling, because I had to leave my home at one end of Lagos to another end. At the time, the lab that my doctors preferred to use was at Oshodi. So I'd have to wake up early in the morning. Sometimes I had to go fasting. Sometimes they wanted the first urine. Sometimes, they wanted me to they wanted me there as early as possible, so it was physically very, very telling on me. Sometimes I just sleep all through the drive till the driver got me there and I'll get out. Once again, I was happy that I had the kind of support system I had, so I could leave the baby at home and I was fine to take care of myself. Dr. Esther Oyehoin came into the picture, and once again, she was very sweet. But much more than Dr. Greg, she was very factual. She was going to give me the facts of what was wrong, and she wasn't going to sugarcoat anything with me. So the first thing she told me was that I had protein in my urine.
We noticed protein in your urine earlier than the second trimester. So that became like a red flag. So that was the signal that made me worry. Though the picture in her at that time looked like preeclampsia, that's pregnancy hypertension. But something in me felt that, look, beyond this pregnancy, I have to keep a watch. I have to follow her up. I have to look at her kidney functions again to be sure that what is happening down there is not beyond preeclampsia, which turned out to be the case eventually. Because by the time we followed her up after her delivery, looked at her renal function, we discovered that something was not really right. So that was her earliest peak. So in a way, I would say that she was quite lucky. The pregnancy brought a lot of good fortune. fortune for her. Bearing in mind that one of the things you want to do in the kidney disease is you want to pick it as early as possible, so that you can bring in intervention that can probably revert the changes that are taking place in the kidney.
I honestly did not quite understand it. I just thought, okay, so maybe I'll start eating proteins and that would help. But then she said that when you have protein in your urine, it simply meant that your kidneys weren't filtering out proteins like they should. That was an indication of weakness on the part of my kidneys, and that was why I had protein in my urine. I was just shocked. I was shocked. Before we started doing all the tests and everything, the headaches came back.
The headache is one of the commonest symptoms, that anyone will present to the clinic. I'm sure if you want to rank the commonest symptoms presented, in the clinic by patients, headache will rank very high in the top 5 symptoms. And the causes of headache can range from things as innocent as stress or poor sleep to something as severe as somebody bleeding the brain, intracranial hemorrhage. So it's the responsibility of the doctor to tease out the headache and find out whether this is a very severe form of headache or is a mild form. So the lesson that people must take is that if you have recurrent headache that persists, that it's not responding to conventional management in a regular time, you have to see a doctor who will evaluate you, investigate you, and determine the severity of the headache, whether it's the type that you should just take easy or the one that you need to go further and intervene.
My first experience with headaches, as far as I can remember, was when I was 8 or 9. What I thought were the triggers for the headaches were distinct smells, bright lights, noise. What I didn't know at the time was that all of these things that I thought were triggers were symptoms that I already had the headache, right? So it meant that, I had migraines, and when I had the migraines, I didn't want to perceive any distinct smell. I didn't want to hear loud music, any type of noise. I didn't want bright lights. I didn't know that they were not triggers, but they were symptoms that I already had a migraine. When I got into boarding school, my mom would, pack up my provisions and everything, and she never forgot to throw in a pill bottle with, the migraine pills. It was when I started visiting Dr. Esther that I realized that headache in itself is not a sickness. It's an indication that something is wrong with you. We started running all the tests. I'd go almost every day. It was very, very, very stressful. And not even to talk about the finances, because I'd run one test and they say, oh, we need to run another one to see if, so you need to run this test again after 3 months, or you need to run it again after, so sometimes I had to do tests twice, 3 times. I did all of that, and then I started seeing Dr. Busari. Dr. Busari is a nephrologist, and he was in charge of my kidneys. He was then at the General Hospital on Broad Street, and that became my Friday routine. Every Friday I have to go check my kidneys and be sure that they were still okay. After some of the tests came through, Dr. Esther read out some of the results to me. That was when I realized that I had some mild kidney dysfunction. I've always been a free-spirited, happy person, and here I was hearing all these things that, I was hearing all these things that were making me feel like I had a problem, or there was something wrong with me, or that I was different, that I wasn't supposed to be this fun-loving, outgoing person, because it was almost like a sentence for me. It was almost like for the rest of my life I was going to be confined to a certain treatment. You know, so I don't know that I took it well. I don't know that I did. I decided that I would do everything that I needed to do to stay alive. I decided I would do whatever it took to fight this. It was a battle, and it was my battle. For the longest time, I didn't tell my family. My husband knew about it, but I didn't tell my family. I just wanted them to still see me as the Ufuoma they knew me to be. And I really didn't want to stress on anyone else, but I knew what I needed to do, and I had decided that I would do what needed to be done. My visits to the nephrologist was very regular. So every week I was seeing the nephrologist and I was seeing the cardiologist. Every week. Never missed a visit. Never. During my visits with the cardiologist, I also got to realize that there was a certain medication that I was on that was very harmful to my kidneys.
For her in particular, this is caused by chronic use of what we refer to as non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, which would include medications that contain aspirin, typically. Other drugs would include ibuprofen. There are common ones which many of those drugs are analgesics, which are used for pain, but the general class is referred to as non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs.
We had to wait for breastfeeding, but for some reason with Kes I couldn't even lactate up to 3 months. So she went off breast milk at I think a month and a half or so because I wasn't lactating. But the doctors were happy because they needed to get onto taking care of me as soon as possible. Once again, Dr. Greg handed me over to Dr. Esther and Dr. Busari. And my meds were changed for reasons I can't explain.
Breastfeeding the baby could be a challenge. During breastfeeding, some of the medications that mothers take eventually get to the babies. And for management of chronic kidney disease, some of the drugs that you want to use to reverse the changes in the kidney, most notably the angiotensin receptors blocker, they go through the breast and they have effect on the baby. So you want to really keep those drugs out of the reach of the baby during breastfeeding, in a sense, and so you want to wait for the mother to complete breastfeeding before you introduce those drugs. It's safer to use them outside of breastfeeding. But if you're really pressed and you need to use the drug urgently, you may ask the woman not to breastfeed and to use formula feed so that you can institute management as early as possible. So that's really what caregivers will do.
When we went back from the pregnancy to post-pregnancy back to the meds I was on, they weren't doing what the doctors wanted. The doctors were not happy, so to say. So we had to get on different meds against the one medication I was on. We continued like that for some time, more tests and stuff, and I just continued to ensure that at least my health was stable. The 11th of September 2017, I was at the editing suite. I had shot a movie, Christmas is Coming, and I was with the editors trying to get it ready for our premiere and our proper screening. It opened in the cinemas on the 24th of November, and our premiere was a week before that, on the 18th. So I was in the studio with the editor. I remember very well. I had just taken on a new protege, if you like, someone who was supposed to be mentoring, so mentee. I was supposed to be mentoring as an actor, and I was talking with her. We're going through some things she had learned in film school, and my phone rang, and it was my kid sister, and and she said, "Oh, did you see the message that, someone posted in the family group?" And I said, "No, I didn't know what it said." And she dilly-dallied, and I said, "I'm in the studio right now, I'm working. Please tell me what it is." And she said, "Ufi has passed on." And for a brief moment, I didn't feel anything. I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. I was bland and empty. I didn't feel anything at all. So I said, "Oh, he's dead. Okay." And I hung up. And I looked around, and everybody was saying, "Oh, calm down, Ma, calm down." And I said, "What?" And one of the girls in the studio said, "Ma, you've just been saying he's dead." I said, "No, I said it once." You said, "No, Ma, you've been saying it." I said it once. I didn't cry. I put myself together. I dismissed my mentee, and I drove to the hospital. My brother's fiance was there. She was a wreck. She had brought him to the hospital earlier that day. She said all through the night he had complained about his inability to breathe, and she just told him to sit up. All through the night she tried to nurse him, and then as soon as it was daylight, she took him to the hospital. So we all went and we saw his body. He was so calm. He just looked beautiful. He looked perfect. He looked like we were playing hide and seek, and he had just closed his eyes and he had counted to 10, and the next thing he was going to say was, "Ready or not, here I come." And I think that was when I actually cried. I looked at him again, and I was just going to hit him and say, "Get up and let's go home, like be up already." We started doing all the necessary paperwork. We did everything we needed to do, and then we proceeded to take the body to the morgue. It was a long day. It was a very long day. There was traffic everywhere. I remember driving behind the ambulance like a crazy person. And we were able to finally get into the morgue and did the paperwork there as well. And they promised us that the embalmment would start immediately. And I remember my sister saying to the attendants, "Just make sure he looks like this when we come back to get him." We went back home that day to my parents. Somehow my dad had heard. We wanted to keep it away from them. But my dad had heard that. That was like another episode. Earlier that year, my father had just turned 80. my late brother is not one for pictures. Like, you'd literally have to tie him, you know, to get a picture. But here he was that day. He wanted to take every picture possible. At a point we said, "Hello sir, this is not a photo shoot, can we be going home?" You know, it was after the whole party and everything. He wanted to get as many pictures as possible. He wanted a picture with the kids, then he wanted one with Steve, then he wanted the girls to take alone, then he wanted the boys to take alone, then he wanted the boys and the kids to take, then he wanted the girls and the kids to take a picture. It was just amazing how many pictures we had with Ufi the day we celebrated my father's 80th birthday. And here we were with my father, and the only thing he kept saying was, "Did you keep me to 80 to embarrass me? Did you keep me till 80 to ridicule me?" And it was really piercing. None of us wanted to hear it, so we just left him alone to cry. We laid my brother to rest, and I think for me, at that point, it was when the reality of the how and the why hit me. I think before then, all I was thinking of was, I've lost someone. Funny enough, the day before my brother passed, which was a Monday, the Sunday prior, myself and my kid sister were in the living room talking, and you know, I was just telling her how far away from me death had been. I was just sharing with her that I had never lost anyone, you know, close to home, anyone close to my heart, and every story of death has been very distant, you know. And the very next day, death came knocking. It wasn't until after his funeral that I realized that I had survived 5 years of what, you know, had just taken my brother away from us almost as soon as it was diagnosed. I got scared. I got very scared. I started to reassess myself. I started to re-question myself. I started to think backwards. Have I done everything the doctors asked me to? Have I been faithful with my medication? Have I even prayed hard enough? Had I held on to God, fasted? Had I done everything that I was supposed to do? That was a very, very low time for me. A time when I'll just stare into space and think, how many other people have found out about this kind of complication and have survived? Going on 6 years. How many other people? You know, I started thinking about all the people who out of the blues, you don't know about their travels and the things that they have gone through, and suddenly you just hear that they're on dialysis, or suddenly you just hear that they died of kidney complications, or suddenly they're just out there asking for funds for a transplant. or they're looking for a kidney donor or a transplant. I began to think many things. Things that maybe I shouldn't be thinking, things that maybe I had no business thinking, but I thought them. A few of my friends who had heard about my brother's passing and I had met up with and called me. Two people in particular that I have to thank, and I have to give credit for being the reason why I'm talking about this today. Mr. Tony Lumelu and Mr. Tony Cole. Tony himself, being married to a medical practitioner, understood more about the causes of my brother's death, but both of them were of the opinion that I already knew too much. Considering how long I had lived with this and how I had carried on and how I dealt with it, they didn't understand why all that knowledge had to belong to just me. I remember one of them asking me, why do you think all of this has happened to you? And why do you think you're still alive? And why do you think it is right that you know as much as you do and you insist that you must go with all that knowledge without sharing it? And I was going to put up this face of, oh, in Africa, you know, how we think about spiritual matters and how you need to keep certain things close to your chest and not talk about them and not share them. But I quickly realized how silly that was. I quickly realized that if someone had told my brother 3, 5, 6 years before he was diagnosed with a kidney dysfunction, if someone had told him that a high blood pressure was abnormal in young people, maybe he would have done something. If someone had told him that there were certain symptoms he was living with that were abnormal, maybe he would have given it more attention. If someone out there doesn't even know that headache is not an ailment on its own, how would they know that they need to take better care of themselves? If somebody out there doesn't know that if they're not holding urine for as long as a certain time, or that, you know, they have certain discoloration in their urine that they need to get checked, if nobody's telling them, how do they know? And I'm trying very hard today not to pass that ball and say that doctors owe us that. I'm trying hard not to say that the media owe us that. I'm also saying that even as individuals, we should also seek to know. The French would call it chercher à savoir. We must take better care of ourselves. I want to leave. I want to see my children grow. I want to be there with them. I want to help them do homework. I want to run around with them. I want to play with them. God willing, I want to see them grow, start families, carry their children. I want to leave. I owe a lot of people that much, and I owe it to myself to leave. It's not enough that we pray. My brother prayed. And I know that he's somewhere up in heaven smiling, because the doctors did say that he committed himself to God. And I know that he's smiling somewhere with Jesus. But for those of us here, it's not enough. It's not enough. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to your generation. There's so much inside of you. Why should you die? Why should you die when you can help not dying? We need to be better aware of our health. We need to be better aware of things around us. We need to be better aware of our nutrition. Every time I say to people I've put on weight, they look at me and they go like, you. Every time I put on weight, it affects my blood pressure. I've got to be at a certain level with my weight. I can't afford to go beyond a certain level. I owe it to myself. And I think it shows some level of discipline to be able to keep yourself in check, to be able to do the things you should do, eat right, live right, be a blessing to yourself and to everyone else around you. There's somebody out there who the doctor has told that there is something wrong with your organs. You're not alone. Many people have survived this. Many people have lived healthy lives. Many people have given away their children in marriage after being diagnosed. I just want you to know that you're not alone. My name is Ufuoma McDermott, and I have been living with a kidney dysfunction.